Hidden treasure in my town? A map leads the way. It was a rainy Saturday afternoon when Ben and Lucas, two best friends, found themselves stuck in Ben's attic. They had been forced indoors by the weather and, out of boredom, started rummaging through old boxes piled high in the dusty space. They weren't looking for anything in particular, maybe an old toy or something to laugh about. But what they found changed everything. Ben pulled out a faded wooden box with rusty hinges. Inside was a brittle, rolled-up piece of parchment. When he unrolled it, their eyes widened. It wasn't just any old paper, it was a hand-drawn map, complete with strange symbols and landmarks. "This looks ancient," Ben whispered, his voice tinged with excitement. "It's a treasure map," Lucas exclaimed, pointing at an X marked boldly on one side. But the map wasn't easy to read. The landmarks were unrecognizable, and parts of it had faded with time. At the bottom was a note in scrawled handwriting: "The treasure lies where the oak meets the stone. Find the key beneath the roots of the old sycamore." Treasure? In our boring little town? Ben scoffed. Lucas grinned. Why not? Let's find out. The first clue. The next morning, the rain had cleared, leaving behind a crisp and sunny day. Armed with the map, a flashlight, and a small shovel, Ben and Lucas headed to the park. They knew the town had an old sycamore tree that matched the clue. When they reached the massive tree, its gnarled roots spread out like fingers clutching the earth. The boys got to work, digging around its base. Lucas struck something hard first. "Got it," he said, pulling out a small, rusted metal box. Inside was a key tied to a note. "The journey begins. Follow the creek until it splits." "The creek?" Ben asked, glancing at the map again. Lucas nodded. "That's not far from here. Let's go." A growing mystery. The creek was narrow and wound through a dense patch of woods near the edge of town. As they followed it, they couldn't help but notice the eerie quietness around them. The usual chirping of birds was absent, and even the sound of the water seemed muted. When they reached the fork where the creek split, they spotted something unusual: an old wooden sign hidden in the underbrush. It pointed toward a barely visible trail, overgrown with weeds. "This isn't on any map I've ever seen," Ben said, glancing nervously at Lucas. "That's the point," Lucas replied. "Come on!" The trail led them deeper into the woods, where the sunlight barely broke through the thick canopy above. After about 20 minutes of walking, they reached a clearing with a massive oak tree. At its base was a large, flat stone. The secret below. Ben and Lucas stared at the stone. It was much too heavy to move on their own. Frustrated, Ben kicked at the dirt around it and froze when his foot hit something hollow. He crouched down and started digging furiously. Soon, they uncovered a wooden trapdoor. It had a keyhole. "Do you think?" Ben began, but Lucas had already taken out the key from the sycamore box. The key fit perfectly. With a satisfying click, the trapdoor swung open, revealing a narrow ladder descending into darkness. "You first," Ben said, shoving Lucas forward. "Coward," Lucas muttered, but he went down anyway. The underground chamber. At the bottom, they found themselves in a small, musty chamber lit dimly by a shaft of light from above. In the center of the room was an ancient wooden chest. "This is it," Lucas shouted, rushing forward. The chest creaked loudly as they opened it. Inside were gold coins, jewels, and what looked like an old journal. The boys stared at the treasure, their faces glowing with excitement. "Who would have thought?" Ben said, picking up one of the gold coins. Lucas opened the journal, flipping through its pages. It's a story about the person who hid this treasure. But as they read, their excitement turned to unease. The journal belonged to a man named Jonathan Carter, a notorious outlaw who had buried his loot here while on the run from the law over a century ago. One passage stood out: "If you found this, beware. The treasure is cursed, and those who take it will face the same fate as I did. Death follows greed." The boys exchanged uneasy glances. "Do you believe this?" Ben asked. "No, but maybe we shouldn't mess with it," Lucas replied, backing away from the chest. The chase. As they debated what to do, a noise echoed from above a low creak, like someone stepping on the wooden trapdoor. The boys froze. "Did you hear that?" Ben whispered. Lucas nodded, his eyes wide. They quickly doused the light and crouched in the darkness. Footsteps descended the ladder. A shadowy figure entered the chamber, a flashlight in one hand and a gun in the other. "Looks like I wasn't the only one who found the map," the man growled. "A clever escape." Thinking quickly, Ben whispered to Lucas, "Distract him." Lucas nodded and stood up. "Hey, don't shoot. We didn't take anything." The man turned toward Lucas, momentarily distracted. Seizing the opportunity, Ben grabbed the journal and hurled it at the flashlight, plunging the room into darkness. In the confusion, the boys scrambled back up the ladder and slammed the trapdoor shut. They piled rocks and debris over it to block the man inside before running back through the woods as fast as they could. The final decision. When they got home, breathless and shaken, they hid the journal and vowed never to go back. They didn't tell anyone about the treasure or the man. But late that night, as Ben lay in bed, he couldn't stop thinking about the curse. Did they leave the treasure behind for good? Or had their discovery already sealed their fate?